welcome to the Texas Talk Podcast with Brad Swale. I am, of course, Brad Swale. Today I'm speaking with Russel Boening, president of the Texas Farm Bureau, which is the state's largest general farm organization with more than 554,000 member families and serves as the voice for Texas agriculture. President Boening is a full-time farmer and rancher from Wilson County, where he grows feed grains, cotton, and wheat, as well as operates a dairy and a beef cattle operation with his brother. He was elected the president of the Texas Farm Bureau in December 2014. We're going to talk about some of the policy goals and priority issues. I look forward to the conversation. President Boening, how are you?
Doing well today, Brad. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. The Texas Farm Bureau is, it's got it. You guys do. As preparing for this conversation, there's a lot that you guys do, and a lot of it is actually, I don't know. I'm a city boy, I guess, right? And so I don't think about farming and ranching too much. It's sort of in my mind as a dream of maybe one day, and hopefully I'll get there. But I think it's really cool what y'all do. So I guess maybe, is there anything I missed in that bio that you wanted to add to?
No, you pretty much nailed it. As far as our farming and ranching operation, been here a long time. Dad and uncle started it back in the mid '50s, and my uncle sold out to my dad kind of around 1980. My brother and I joined my dad shortly thereafter, and we've been here ever since. It's been a family affair, and we've been successful. We've worked hard, but we've been blessed as well. So it's been good.
Yeah. You're really practicing. You're living the lifestyle. That's for sure. So let's talk about some of the policy goals that the Farm Bureau has set forth. First off, how did y'all come to the policy goals, and what does that mean as a policy goal?
Well, we have a pretty structured way of doing it. We're structured that we have county organizations that are part of Texas Farm Bureau, the state organization. So our counties usually get together by district in August. And we do that every August. We talk about things that are important to them, important to them as producers, in their area. Talk about things that, some of it, kind of morphs over into what's going on in rural Texas. It's not maybe exactly everything straight with agriculture. It might be something to do with rural schools. It might be property rights, those type of things. So they talk about that in August, and then every county has an annual meeting, usually September, October. And if they have something that needs addressing, eminent domain, they feel like there's some overreach with eminent domain. We fought that fight for several sessions in the Texas legislature, and not that we understand there's going to be eminent domain. There's things that are important for the public good, but we just had to get some things changed a little bit as far as fair compensation to landowners, to property owners. So that was one. That's how we kind of go through the process. And then we have our annual meeting usually every first few days of December. And that's where it's the opportunity for all of us to meet together. The counties have sent their policy objectives to the state, but then the entire state delegation gets to vote on those policies.
Yeah.
So, we talk about different things. Some of them are state policies, some of them are national policies. And that all kind of relates to the topics that we're going to cover today.
Yeah.
Some of them are national, some of them are state.
One of them's international.
Yes, sir.
So, it seems like obviously Mexico is, it's an important partner in U.S. trade. It's, I think, very important in the Texas trade. A lot of intermingling of culture, historically and today. And I found this interesting. I guess there's a 1944 U.S.-Mexico water treaty, and it seems like Mexico's not upholding its end of the bargain. I don't know. We're told of agricultural and climate sort of disasters, maybe constantly, and sure, those happen. There's droughts in Texas regularly, and it seems like this water treaty is it's important for Texas farmers. Is Mexico not upholding its end of the bargain?
That's correct, Brad. And it's really come to light in the last several years. Not to get too far down in the weeds, but it's like a 5-year cycle, and Mexico is obligated under this treaty to release, because there's shared watershed. So there's some water storage in Mexico, and there's some in Texas. But anyway, they are obligated to release 350,000 acre feet of water per year. That's how water is measured. So, and they've basically said, no, we're not going to release it this year. We'll release it next year or the year after when we have more water. Well, but they're obligated to do it every year. And then they're kind of looking at it like, well, I can do it in year 3 of the 5-year cycle and just kind of make up for what I didn't release in year 1 or 2. But if you're a farmer in the Rio Grande Valley, you need that water every year.
Yeah.
You can't grow this year's crop on water that's going to be released 2 years down the road, right?
Sure.
So and it's they've kind of just ignored the treaty, and it's one of those things where if there's no enforcement mechanism, how do you make them do it? So we're putting pressure on our folks, our U.S. Congress folks in that valley and in the valley area have really stepped up and tried to get this. It's a State Department issue because it's a national issue. It's not something that Texas can make happen. It's something that the U.S. government has to make happen. So that's kind of what that deal is, and it is real important to our valley farmers.
Yeah. So we don't need to get down into the weeds necessarily, but so they're releasing the water from where? From reservoirs in
Mexico.
Okay.
And just to kind of sum it up, their agriculture has grown, Brad.
Yeah.
On the Mexico side, which is good.
Sure.
When this treaty was signed, they had 3 reservoirs. Big. We're talking about big reservoirs that they have since added 8 reservoirs on their side to hold more water to supplement their agriculture. Well, you can appreciate that, but still there's a treaty that they're supposed to adhere to. And so that's kind of the fight there.
So there's reservoirs on the Texas side as well, correct?
Yeah, there's shared reservoirs on our side, Falcon, Amistad, but the way the treaty's written, 2/3 of the water because some of the water ends up in their reservoir that actually came from our side of the river. It's because
it's a river. It's water.
Water doesn't know any boundaries.
Yeah.
Other than where it flows. So again, it's just something that we're working on. We hope we can move forward.
So what are these Texas farmers that are struggling for water when it's Mexico's year to release all of these hundreds of thousands of acre feet? How do you
acre feet?
Yeah. Which I think is how much water it takes to fill an acre of land, 1 foot of water.
Exactly.
There we go.
Exactly.
Like, I don't know when I learned that, but I remembered it. So what happened? What do these Texas farmers do if this water doesn't get released from Mexico?
They just don't have enough water to fully supplement their crop. I mean, they may still have some water, but they just don't have enough to grow the crop that they're capable of growing.
Yeah.
Especially if you hit a drought. If you hit a drought, which we've had some drought years. So that it affects their yields. It affects their.
So it affects their bottom line, and affects. I'm sure there's a lot of downstream effects. Perhaps if supply goes down, maybe and demand stays the same, maybe prices go up.
And some of this water, I should touch on this. Just some of this water is municipal water as well.
Uh-oh.
It's not just ag water.
Yeah.
It's not just agricultural water. We have cities in that valley area, because you well know the valley area has grown tremendously as well. And not just the triangle, of the big cities, but the valley area has grown as well. And we have municipalities that are getting short of water as well.
Yeah, for sure. So in the farming industry, I've talked to farmers and ranchers and at different times in my life, and it does seem like there's some overregulation happening, and that's not, I guess, not too surprising in many ways. But I know that some of your policy goals and priority issues is to address some of that overregulation. I think some of it may include things like meat processing, right? You're a rancher. You may, I'm sure you deal with this all the time. You have to take your meat to there's not a whole lot of meat processors out there that you can take your meat to. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So what are some of the largest overregulation, or the most pressing I guess the most overbearing, I should say, regulations that y'all are trying to address?
Well, over the past several years, one thing we've dealt with is waters of the U.S., or WOTUS. You've seen that talked about. That's an EPA. That's a federal regulation through the EPA. Has a lot to do with runoff and how runoff from your farm or ranch is regulated, and it gets pretty complicated. But it got to where basically they wanted to regulate water that was maybe in what we would call a ditch or a creek that only runs when it rains.
Yeah.
And when you start regulating that type of a water flow, that gets overbearing. It really does. You touched on meat processing. I'm not real familiar with that end because I'm not involved in the meat processing. We've talked to meat processors, and there's just a whole gamut of things that they deal with, whether it be labor regulations, whether it be environmental regulations. And I want to make this clear, Red. We understand, those of us in agriculture, there's going to be some regulation. We understand that.
Sure.
Nobody wants this to be the wild, wild west where you do whatever you want to do and discharge whatever you want to do and those type of things. But it just seems to be, especially with back to the WOTUS deal, the EPA rule, it's very vague as far as what is regulated, what is not regulated, and it's almost like you have to get a environmental engineer at times to know what is regulated and what's not. So those are the type of things we're dealing with. And then on a state level, little simpler stuff like being able to haul your hay. When you haul big round bales,
yeah,
people sometimes they're over width, because 8 foot is the limiting width. Well, we want to be able to not have to go get a permit to haul that hay, at least within a certain distance of your home base.
Yeah.
You follow me? So if you're delivering hay 20 miles to your cows from your home base, you shouldn't have to go get a permit.
Yeah.
Now, if you're commercially hauling hay 500 miles on interstates, maybe that should be different rules.
Sure. Yeah.
So those are the type of things we deal with.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's always fun to see hay go down the highway. Plenty of dad jokes involved. You tell your son that that's shredded wheat over there. So there's lots of regulation, and these regulations, I can imagine I think it's pretty simple. The one you described with the transport, you're just going 20 miles down the road. To have to get a permit to do that is pretty over it. I could see the overbearing nature of that. It takes time, potentially money, stuff like that. Is your goal to just improve the efficiency of the life of the farmer and the rancher?
Right.
And
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Just things that make, and I'm not trying to blow smoke or pat. Farmers and ranchers are environmental stewards. They are, I told you about how when our operation started, and we're farming land that my grandfather started farming in 1930.
Yeah.
I mean, I want that land for the next generation, whether it be, my descendants or whoever it might be. I want that land to be in better shape than when I found it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to. So I just think there's a lot of things bureaucracy doesn't understand, that to be a successful farm and ranch, you really do have to you have to be environmentally responsible as well.
Yeah.
If you're not, then you or somebody else is going to pay the price down the road.
Yeah. Had your grandfather, who started the farm and ranch, had he not taken care of the land, then you wouldn't be doing what you're doing today. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That makes sense. So this pops up in the news a lot recently. The UN is trying to push some. They're pushing a lot of initiatives. Let's say, trying to reduce the world's population's consumption of meat, for instance. And one of your policy goals is to remove the United States from the United Nations, and that's when I saw that, I was kind of surprised. Texas Farm Bureau asking the U.S. to remove itself from the UN, and I think you might find friends there in a lot of different corners. What? I was just kind of surprised. So what's the argument behind that? Why remove the whole U.S.? Why not? Is there a little bit that could be removed, or should it be the whole thing?
Well, that's it. The last part of your question is really good, but just to kind of, those are things that you say, well, that's really not, for years and years, you think, well, the UN's really not, it's not ag related. They're not bothering agriculture. They're talking about one world governments and those type of things, and that's another, that's probably a whole another story. But what you mentioned earlier about when they start talking about the U.S. needs to dramatically reduce their consumption of meat. That I'm kind of paraphrasing, but that's basically what they said.
Yeah.
Well, we feel like they're veering into our lane now. I mean, they're veering into a producer's lane that is a beef producer, and let the science take care of it. Let personal preference take care of it. We're very much a broad organization. But for them to start saying, well, it's because of climate, it's because of climate change, and reducing beef production would be a climate smart practice. That's not really true. When you really get down into the science, agriculture has done a lot of things to be more efficient in and reduce their carbon footprint. So, and then, there's a lot of science out there that talks, you hear about cows, cows fluctuating and too much methane gas. That's kind of, it's kind of way out there. Okay. I don't know how else to say it. And so we just felt like they're veering out of their lane into our lane.
Yeah. And,
I guess, I've done a little more research on the UN, and, it's a big worldwide organization. Many, many countries are members. I'm sure they do some admirable things. So you ask, well, is it, maybe, but this is our policy. I mean, we're very much a policy driven organization, but maybe it's some part of just getting people to recognize what the UN is suggesting for the United States. In the long run, do we get out? That's a big lift. We understand that.
Yeah.
But it calls attention to what they're doing to agriculture, or to what they're suggesting agriculture do. So we've had this policy in Texas for several years. This is a national policy. So it will go, it's a national policy passed by Texas delegates. So it will go in front of the American Farm Bureau meeting, which happens in January.
Yeah.
So will it pass there? Maybe, maybe not. Whether it passes or not, though, at least it's calling attention, in our opinion, to something that we need to be aware of. And maybe if it doesn't pass, maybe we need to address it a different way.
Yeah. Sure.
So.
No, I mean, I love a good steak just as much as the next guy, maybe more. Is there, I'm just trying to think that if removing the U.S. from the UN is too big of an ask, and I could see both sides of the arguments, right? Is there opportunities to sort of like piecemeal say, go to the Texas legislature and say, I want, it's important. It's an important industry to Texas. It's important to Texas culture, Texas business, farming, ranching, stuff like that. Certainly culturally, and all the other ones. But some sort of state legislative action that says we're going to protect Texas farmers and ranchers from overbearing international organizations that want to eliminate our ability, regardless of what the U.S. says, right? The U.S. can stay or leave, but here in Texas, we're going to stand up and we're going to say no. Is that another direction that you would consider taking?
Oh, I think so, Brad. I think anytime, you can go that route, or, maybe it's up to us as agricultural organizations, whether it be the Farm Bureau in states, or whether it be the national organization, whether it be a national beef organization, to say, to address it and say, folks, and address it to our national leaders that get in a room with the UN, with the UN folks from other countries, and say, wait a minute, what y'all are, what we're putting out here about beef consumption is not a good thing, because, and it's not just about the success of beef producers in this country, Brad. I mean, there's developing countries all over this world, as we well know, and developing countries, as they develop meat, whether it's beef, whether it's chicken, whether it's pork, we can go on down the line.
Sure.
Lamb, whatever. That becomes more of their diet. And as we look at that being more of their diet, it generally improves their health. It's part of a balanced diet. And that's all I'm saying. That's all we're saying. And it's important that we be able to, 12 to 15% of our beef is exported from this country. Is that not important to those developing countries that need that as a source of protein?
Yeah.
So it's a big picture. And I think when the UN as an international organization kind of, wants to pat that down, so to speak, we don't think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I could certainly understand that. Is there a truth in labeling aspect to this as well as, technology? And I want to say that the UN has perhaps pushed this, but don't quote me on that. I don't have that reference pulled up in front of me. But lab grown meat, for instance, using cell cultures from chicken or beef or whatever to grow in a lab beef or chicken or whatever the meat is. Is there a truth in labeling aspect to this as well, where if that gets pushed, and how am I as a consumer supposed to know the difference? Perhaps I don't want lab grown meat. I want the real McCoy. Is there a truth? Is there an aspect to that as well?
Oh, for sure. And we're very much in favor of that. We understand that there's technology out there, and there's things that are going to happen like that. But we definitely want a truth in labeling deal. We want that meat, or that, I have trouble calling it meat, but I guess it is. But we want that product labeled as such. This was cell grown, grown in a laboratory. And again, consumer preference, consumer choice.
Yeah.
We understand that, but you should know what you're buying. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, you're in no way advocating that it should be outright banned, assuming it's safe to eat and everything. You just want the consumer to see on the label, I don't know, lab grown, cell grown, whatever the case may be, just some sort of distinction. So in the recent election, there was Proposition 1, I believe it was, at the Texas election, and that that it had to do with the right to farming, ranching, timber production, horticulture, and wildlife management. And I think it was Travis County, where I happen to be, was the only one that voted against it. Tell me a little bit about what that proposition was, and then my understanding is it had something to do with, cities grow, there's conflicts a little bit between farmers and ranchers and cities. I don't know how often that happens, but often enough for a Texas proposition, it seems. Is that, so this passed, how big of a problem is that?
Well, to say that it was a huge problem, Brad, is probably an overstatement, because I don't think it was a huge problem. I think a lot of cities, whether we're talking big cities, whether we're talking suburbia, understand the need for agriculture. But some of our members were facing some pushback from, quite frankly, from mostly suburban type cities, out, on the outskirts of a DFW or wherever.
Yeah.
And so we just thought it was a good opportunity to work on this, get it passed. Again, we're not really asking for anything that we're not already doing. I mentioned earlier about, we understand there's going to be regulations, but some of them were being, you can use different words, a little bit ridiculous. You can use overbearing. You can use whatever you want to use. And we have examples of that. And was it widespread? Probably not. But as Texas grows, and Texas has been growing quite dramatically for the past 20, 30 years, whatever number you want to use. And
no sign of stopping.
We all know, sir.
No sign of stopping.
That's right. No sign of stopping. People want to come to Texas. And so we thought it was a good opportunity to say, hey, if a municipality, and it was mostly municipalities, if you're going to pass an ordinance that regulates agriculture, it needs to fall, because there was already some statutes on the books, but it needs to be a public health or safety issue. If it's a public health or safety issue, then the ordinance, we understand.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a city ordinance that does not allow your livestock out on a public roadway, that is perfectly understandable.
That makes sense.
Your livestock should not be allowed on a public roadway. It's a safety hazard, those type of things. But when we have cities that are passing ordinances, well, your grass can only be 10 or 12 inches tall, but you're growing that grass for hay. We spoke about round bales earlier. If you're growing that grass for hay, it needs to get taller than 10 or 12 inches.
Yeah.
It's just natural. And it may need to be 4 or 5 feet tall. And it's not, it's not giving a public health or safety issue. We've had people that are growing wheat in the city limits. Most wheat gets to be 3 feet tall, maybe 4 at the max. But they had that ordinance. The city goes out there and shreds the farmer's wheat down before he harvests the wheat.
Oh, I was going to say that sounds like free labor.
Well, but he shreds it down before he could harvest it, and no wheat to harvest, and they send him a bill for the shredding. So those are the kind of things that we wanted to prevent. And I think Prop 1, getting it in the Texas Constitution, we believe provides some teeth there, and it'll be good for agriculture and good for consumers as well, because it still enables people to have agriculture close to the urban areas. We talk about local agriculture quite a bit, and folks will be able to have that agriculture.
Yeah. So as cities grow and they get to farmland and everything like that, I want to ask you about feral hogs, because I mean, I live in the city. I've seen feral hogs. I've been out to ranches. I know. I'm sort of aware of them. I think people sort of know somewhere in the recesses of their mind that they heard once that feral hogs are a problem, but they don't really understand because they think of it as just a Babe Pig in the City or whatever movie, right? But and also in the city, I don't know that I've ever heard of a feral hog in the city. I'm sure it happens. But it sort of stays outside. So as cities grow, I don't know if that problem if that'll come into cities more and more. But tell people a little bit about the feral hog problem, why it's a big problem, and what do you want to do about it?
Over the past, I've been doing this for just a little over 40 years now. So over the past 40 years, Brad, I've seen the feral hog problem in our area. And of course, I speak with people all around the state. It's just exploded. Their population, and I don't know what their population was 30 or 40 years ago. I'm sure we could find that out, but I know it has grown exponentially in 30 or 40 years. They're just destructive. I can't say it any other way, especially to cropland, pasture land as well. When I say pasture land, whether you're grazing it or making hay. But for instance, irrigated crops, irrigated corn, irrigated grain sorghum, and it's not just irrigated, but we have irrigated crops. They will go into an irrigated cornfield and just use whatever acres you want to. Sure. Say it's 120 acres, because that's a quarter, what we call a quarter mile circle. And if unchecked in our area, they will easily destroy 20%.
Jeez.
Easily.
Yeah.
So you do the math, and you'll have, of the 120 acres, you'll have 100 acres left, maybe.
Yeah.
And when I say destroy, it's flat. There's nothing there to harvest.
Are they eating it, or are they just they're rummaging?
They're eating some of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're eating some of it, but they flatten out as much as they eat or more. So that's, it's just the numbers. They've become an invasive species, and they really have no natural predator.
Yeah.
None. No natural predator. Even the baby piglets, when the sow first has them, she stays with them, and even coyotes won't mess with them, because they won't mess with mama pig.
Yeah,
I guarantee you that.
They can be very dangerous for sure.
So, and we're seeing them, on highways, causing damage to vehicles in the rural areas. It is a big problem.
Yeah,
it is creeping into suburbia some places. We've heard of them on golf courses.
Yeah.
And they'll be destructive on a golf course as well.
Yeah.
They love things like nut grass. Of course, they love grain, any type of corn, grain, sorghum. I mean, that's a buffet to them. And so we just we're working on different ways to control them. We hunt them, we trap them. You just can't keep up with the population by hunting and trapping.
Yeah. So the problem now is about 20% of the farmland could be destroyed if left unchecked. But that's, like you said, exponential. Today it's 20%. Next year, if left unchecked, because of their pregnancy cycles, I don't know what the right word is, they have so many babies so fast. I think they have, I don't know how many litters per year. They're capable of several.
If the weather's good, they can have 2 to 3. And I say, if you hit a drought, it affects their numbers some.
Sure.
But it takes them no time to come back. So 2 to 3 litters a year, so just use 2.5, and they can have 7 to 8 easily. That's 20 pigs a year. I'm probably being a tick conservative in a good year.
Yeah.
So mama pig has, the sow has 20 pigs a year, and maybe you get 10% of them by hunting, and trapping. But so it doesn't take long. You don't have to be a mathematician.
Yeah. So left unchecked, that 20% easily in a few years could be 25%, and a few years after that could be 30 if left unchecked. So are there other methods besides? So there's lots of destruction. They're dangerous. You hit one with your car, you might as well be running into, a brick wall. Are there other methods besides hunting and trapping that could be used?
Nothing that we have now. We're working where there's research being done on a toxicant that would be hog specific.
Yeah,
I need to be very, very plain about that. It would be hog specific, so that there's other species that you don't want to affect, of course.
Yeah.
So we're working on things like that. Hopefully, we'll get something done. Again, it's a constant battle. But we do things. I mean, we get creative. I mean, you can legally hunt them by helicopter.
I've seen that.
So that's good. I mean, and we usually try to do that in late winter, when like most of the trees have dropped their leaves.
Yeah,
and you can see better. Again, it's just something that has become a big problem.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess finally, I want to ask you about farm labor shortages. I see mixed reports about the economy and jobs. Sometimes they're great. Sometimes articles say it's great. Sometimes they say it's doom and gloom. I don't really know. In the farm industry, especially here in Texas, I think this also might have to do with with Mexico as well. A lot of immigrants come across the border. What's going on with the farm labor? Is there a shortage? Are you fine? Is there what's going on, and what do y'all want to do?
There is an extreme shortage, especially in certain commodities, certain areas.
Yeah.
Vegetables, fruits, some in livestock when you move into to the dairy industry. So those commodities that are still quite labor intensive, there is a shortage, an extreme shortage in some areas. We've been working on this, Brad, as a state and national organization, and other organizations have as well. We really want to try to separate. Immigrants have historically done different types of labor in this country. You know that. If we can talk about agriculture, we can talk about the service industries, and we can talk about construction.
Yeah.
Many of those jobs, immigrants have always, not exclusively, but immigrants have historically been the backbone of those industries.
Yeah.
That's a true statement. But we want to separate immigration from what we're calling a good guest worker program. What's happening at the border now is really nothing to do with helping our labor situation. It's not. Number one, you can't hire someone here that's not here legally. You cannot legally hire these folks that are just coming across. They're actually not legal here yet. What do they have? They have a court date. They're supposed to, I mean, we all know that. Yeah. We all know that drill. So what we're working on is something that brings folks in here legally. There is a program called the H-2A program, but it's for seasonal workers. So, and it needs some tweaking from we don't use it because we normally need year-round workers.
Yeah.
So from what I understand from folks that use the H-2A program, mostly used in vegetables, fruits, it works, but it needs some tweaking. We're looking for something where we can get year-round labor for jobs basically that American citizens either don't want to do or don't have to do.
Yeah.
So
at the very least, they're not applying for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So hopefully, and we've made some headway. We've gotten the ear of some folks in DC, and we understand we need a secure border. We're not looking for, but we're trying to separate the two because what's happening on the border is really not related to ag workers, I guess is the best way to say it.
Yeah. So I guess to summarize a little bit, you're trying you want a special guest worker program to bring people over legally that will do the work rather than illegal labor or H2. Yeah, I think that makes sense. So President Russel Boening of the Texas Farm Bureau, I really appreciate you taking the time. Your website is texasfarmbureau.org. Is there any other information you want to get out there? Website, contact, social media, anything like that?
Well, we have a presence on social media. Like you mentioned, our website. If folks can go to our website, and we have a lot of different programs. You talked about earlier when we first started about the many different things we do, and we talked a lot about our policies. We try to be very active in the schools, in education, as far as providing resources for schools, just for students in their science class or wherever, providing materials that are great for, science classes. Of course, they talk about agriculture, and there's all that stuff's on our website. Would encourage folks to check it out and contact our state offices in Waco. We have a great staff, different departments that can surely help folks out.
Yeah. Well, President Russel Boening, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time.
Brad, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.